Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Celebrate Local History Month. My name is Glenda Childs. I'm the owner of the Doylestown Bookshop and the new Lahaska Bookshop, if you've had a chance to visit our new store there. I want to thank you all for coming. This is our 4th year working with the Doylestown Historical Society to celebrate our local history. And while I have an opportunity to see so many of you here all together, I want to thank you for supporting our stores and our events. You coming out makes us able to be here. Your support enables us to be here. In fact, we're celebrating in May our 20th anniversary for the bookstore. And so much thanks to the community to be able to be here like that, and your support is crucial. So I am ready to start the program. I am going to introduce you to the president of the Doylestown Historical Society, Stu Abramson.
Thank you, Glenda. Well, it's nice to see another really nice crowd here. This is the 3rd installment of our History at the Bookshop series, and it's another one of these anniversary type of shows. Last week we talked about the 200th anniversary of Doylestown Township. So not to be undone, I guess, by that, the borough wanted to have its say too. We couldn't come up with quite a round number as 200 or even 100. So we're going to commemorate the commemoration of Doylestown Borough, which happened in the year 1938, and that was about 80 years prior to now. That's as close as we can come. And so that celebration, the 100th anniversary of the borough becoming a borough, was done in 1938, and the borough made a very big deal about that. The celebration was over a full week period, and the coverage was immense of that event. And it was covered primarily by the Intelligenza newspaper, so we thought it would be appropriate for our speaker to be a journalist from the Intel, and that is Carl LaVO, who is our primary speaker today. And those of you who read the Intel will recognize that name. Carl publishes a history article, a full-page history article in the Intel, which is, if you haven't read it, it's just a terrific article every week. And so he certainly is qualified to do that. He is, in addition to being a journalist, he is an author, a speaker, obviously, and a historian as well. As a matter of fact, while I'm here, I know Carl will be talking about this, but this is one of his books. I think this is your latest, right, Carl?
Latest book.
Latest book is right here for sale if you feel so moved to do that. The other thing I'll mention is that we're going to do this in 2 parts today. So part 1 will be Carl LaVO. The second part will be Milt Kenin. Milt Kenin will speak after Carl. Milt is our chief archivist at the Doylestown Historical Society. He's the one who thunk up this idea, as a matter of fact. I have to give him credit for that. But Milt's specialty is in living connections to the past. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do this commemoration is that 80 years ago, there are still people, some of them in this very audience, who have a first degree of separation, if you will, with this very event in 1938. So Milt will be talking about that and introducing some people who have memories of that celebration in 1938. So Milt will be on following Carl. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, Carl LaVO.
I'm dressed this way because I'm coming from a party for my grandkids. Every Valentine's Day I show up at my granddaughter's preschool dressed as Mr. Valentine. So Dashiell was very upset that he didn't get a visit, so I go as an elf. Hey, perfect. On St. Patrick's Day, but this year St. Patrick's Day fell on Saturday night, the speaking engagement, so I told him I'd show up there. So I'm coming from that. And And Milt's coming on after me, and my understanding is that the first speaker gets a 2-hour segment. And Milt gets 5 minutes, right? Milt? Yeah, okay. Well, Milt is the reason I'm here. He called me and said, can I do a column about Doylestown's 100th anniversary? And so I did a bit of research, wrote a column about it, and then expanded the column in a program, which I'll run through now. And then I'll be glad to answer any questions. And if anybody wants to correct what I've written, don't bother. No, that's all right, just raise your hand. As you can see from this image, Doylestown was a crossroads village in colonial times. Because it was located at the center of Bucks County, it became the seat of county government in 1813. The town was incorporated in 1838. Much happened in 100 years since the birth of Doylestown Borough. So in 1938, a big celebration was planned to outdo any in county history. Approached recently by Milt Kenin, that's him, of the Doylestown Historical Society, right about the great Centennial celebration, I look back on the planning. I can attest that town meetings in Bucks County can get pretty feisty. The mayor of Doylestown is here, and he could probably vouch for that. In my 45-year career as a reporter and editor, I've seen it all. Raucous crowds demanding political blood, near fisticuffs, citizens and officials going tit for tat over crazy ideas, sometimes broaching into laughter. It's just the way fundamental democracy is. That's particularly true here in Pennsylvania, where municipal meetings in 54 municipalities at times remind me of a Stars Hollow town meeting in the Gilmore Girls, as seen here. Doylestown officials wanted the week-long festivities in early June 1838 to reflect all aspects of the county seat's 100-year-old incorporated history. That's when purists rose to insist on a few things out of the ordinary. One of them, I understand, was Lester Chalk. One of the things someone suggested, and I believe it was Lester, was a hanging. The former county prison, the site of today's Michener Art Museum, was where at least one convicted murderer met his maker on the grounds. During deliberations of the Centennial Planning Committee, one member insisted on a staged hanging. The idea nearly caused the panel, quote, to ply apart, according to volunteer Grace Chandler. Quote, he insisted that no resume of the town's history would be worth a tinker's dam unless a famous hanging in the jailhouse yard was given full dramatic treatment. Oh, yeah. Another panel urged the committee to build a replica of the borough's first telegraph office at the exact moment it was struck by lightning. The idea was to set it afire with an appropriate bolt of electricity. Debate ensued. Someone noted the real operator narrowly escaped. He had gone to get a cup of tea. The make-believe operator might not be so lucky, the group concluded. Both ideas naturally fizzled. It was then someone anteed up yet another suggestion. Get the Reading Railroad to build temporary tracks from the town depot to the fairgrounds. Then supply a century-old smokestack locomotive to replicate the coming of the railroad to Doylestown in 1856. Now you're talking. All were in on that suggestion. The railroad's reply, you got to be kidding. At one point, the committee anteed up $1,000 for professional production companies to stage an historical pageant on the green in front of Fonthill Castle. That, too, was a bomb. Reported Grace Chandler, the commercial dispensers from the Midwest had as much idea about Doylestown's yesterdays as an Eskimo has of Danny Kaye's brand of swing. With time narrowing, the committee went into heavy lift mode. It organized the entire town to celebrate history in a self-drawn historical drama involving 1,000 community actors and singers, all narrated by Edward G. Beester, who is retired president judge of the court in Doylestown. Our Yesterdays featured 23 scenes emphasizing historic periods of Doylestown's existence, repeated on 3 successive nights at the fairgrounds. as seen here along Swamp Road in the Maplewood area. Accolades would pour in. The staging of a minuet in a flower garden also was a hit, but some in town termed the aristocratic dance of European ballrooms un-American. Performers in tailed tuxedos and fancy gowns swirling amidst the greenery caught the eye. According to the local newspaper, astonished motorists on South Main Street eased pressure on the gas and gawked while the stately old dance was recreated. The Centennial Committee published copies of an 86-page plywood-bound commemorative book that quickly sold out, as you can see right here. The group also marketed wooden nickels redeemable throughout town during the week-long celebration. Daily, a town crier rode into town swinging a large bell to announce historical reenactments, like the 1926 arrival of a Conestoga wagon with the borough's first settlers, including the Doyle family. In years to come, William Doyle would obtain a license to build a tavern at today's Main and State Street. Doylestown was born. The crier also announced the arrival of a stagecoach with the first mail delivery of 1792. So what were the significant events in Doylestown and the surrounding county in the first 100 years after the borough's incorporation in 1838? You have to start in 1810. That's when state government decided Doylestown should be the county seat. It had been Newtown and before that Bristol. People in Newtown weren't happy and engaged in a 30-year state legislative campaign to divide Bucks into two counties, Newtown as the seat of Penn County. Doylestown prevailed, however, as the government seat of a singular county. The year 1838 was noted in Doylestown becoming a borough. It was also the year the Bucks County branch of the American Anti-Slavery Society formed. Many members are Quakers, adamantly opposed to slavery and committed to building a network of safe houses in Bucks to smuggle runaway slaves to freedom in New England and Canada. The network would become part of the fabled Underground Railroad. In 1846, Doylestown joins the modern world with the construction of its first electric telegraph station. Finally, a Pony Express isn't needed to communicate important news to the outside world. Let there be light. It is 1854 that night becomes day in downtown Doylestown with the coming of the first gas streetlights. People are astounded by the illumination. In 1856, the world begins to speed up in the borough. The North Pennsylvania Railroad arrives on a new rail line to the county seat. Now a trip to Philadelphia will take 2 hours rather than 10 hours by stagecoach. 1856 is also the year Henry Chapman Mercer is born in Doylestown. More on that later. Then there is war. With the Civil War raging, Camp Lacey is established in Doylestown to train recruits for the Bucks County Regiment, which became the 104th Pennsylvania Volunteers. William Watts Hart Davis, editor of the Doylestown Democrat newspaper, is given command. The colonel will in later years found the Bucks County Historical Society. The Industrial Revolution accelerates in Bucks. Textile factories like the Grundy Woolen Mill in Bristol would blossom. Cigar manufacturing also took off in and around Quakertown and elsewhere to make Bucks the third largest producer of stogies in Pennsylvania. By this year, 1878, Doylestown has grown as a county seat to the point a new courthouse is needed. What a magnificent edifice it would be. The stone structure designed by architect Addison Hutton includes a dramatic clock tower seen for miles around. One other event would change the culture of Doylestown, arrival of the first telephone line. Getting around becomes even easier with the construction of the first rail system for streetcars. The trolley lines connect Doylestown to Willow Grove, Newtown, and Easton, and will quickly expand to towns all over Bucks. The year marks the beginning of an artistic renaissance in Bucks County with the birth of the Pennsylvania Impressionism movement centered at Phillips Mill in New Hope. Artists such as William Lathrop, Daniel Garber, Robert Spencer, R. Sloan Redden, George Sauter, and Charles Rosen revel in painting the Bucks landscape, making the county famous internationally. Doylestown's wealthy archaeologist, Henry Mercer, is asked to design and install the floor of the new Pennsylvania State Capitol in Harrisburg in 1906. Using ceramic tiles made at his Moravian Tile Works factory in the Borough, he lays down in descriptive tiles a colorful, quote, carpet of history on the floor of the Capitol. In 1907, Mercer designs and begins construction of his new home, Doylestown's Font Hill Castle. It's made entirely of reinforced concrete, which he pioneered. It is there he designs tiles while writing extensively. It is during this period that he, with a crew of 8 and a horse named Lucy, builds a new museum for the Bucks County Historical Society to house his vast collection of pre-industrial crafts and trades. At his death in 1930, Mercer will leave behind to the public his Moravian Tile Works, Font Hill Castle, and the Tools of the Nation Maker Museum, renamed the Mercer Museum. Together they become the Mercer Mile and attract international attention. Bucks County's Company G of the 28th Infantry Keystone Division is called to duty in World War I. They fight across France and join in the final push that wins the war for the Allies. All the while, members of Doylestown's American Red Cross prepare bandages and other supplies for the European war. The Great Depression begins in 1930. The new Roosevelt administration invests heavily in public works projects to get the economy back on its feet. In Bucks County, 9 projects are funded. They include reconstruction of William Penn's Manor House in Pennsbury and a memorial watchtower on Bowman's Hill overlooking Washington Crossing Historic Park in Solebury. The last trolley line in Bucks serving Doylestown goes out of business in 1931. Automobiles and improved highway services caused Doylestowians to embrace cars as the better means of travel. Bucks County established its reputation as a haven and a second home for New York-based novelists, playwrights, actors, songwriters, poets, and other cultural artists. Property in Doylestown, Solebury, and New Hope become sought after. S.J. Perlman, Pearl Buck, Ezra Stone, Moss Hart, Oscar Hammerstein, Dorothy Parker, and many others are drawn here by inexpensive land and the romantic landscape of Buck's aging farms and historic farmhouses, popularized by paintings of the New Hope art colony. Toward the end of the decade, work begins on converting an old New Hope mill into the celebrated Bucks County Playhouse, which leads us to 1938 in Doylestown, where Jane Withers is starring and keeps smiling at the County Theater. Indeed, there was much to smile about during Doylestown's Centennial Celebration Week, which was May 31st through June 4th. There were musical concerts, a military parade, a parade of progress, Burpee Flower Garden receptions, Centennial Oak Tree plantings, Mercer Museum receptions, ballroom dancing, and a Centennial Night of Frolic in the, quote, Mardi Gras tradition. A massive crowd filled Doylestown for the finale on Saturday, June 4th. Passing in review is a grand parade honoring the borough's colorful past. An American Indian in loincloth on horseback, escorted by schoolboys, represented the town's prehistory. Marching behind was a regiment of Continental soldier reenactors portraying the Revolutionary War when George Washington led them through Doylestown in 1777. A Conestoga wagon representing the Doyle family's arrival made an appearance. A stagecoach also passed with the mail delivery of 1792. A tractor, antique cars, bicycles, marching bands, military veterans of many wars all took their turns. Anybody here ever ride in a glide? Which is that car? Glide. I think that's hard rubber wheels, so the road must have been pretty smooth to get a glide. The The Doylestown High School Marching Band enthralled spectators, as you can see here. Girl Scouts proudly marched past onlookers at the old Rexall store. Motorized floats rolled into view, including one with typical living rooms divided by a partition, one from 1838 when the borough was incorporated and one from 1938.
Assistance to the back register, please. Assistance to the back register.
A horse-drawn coach also passed with parade and Centennial Queen Carolyn Fellman and her court. Can you back up just a minute? This is Carolyn. And over here is Virginia Shaw, if anybody remembers her. She was the Miss Columbia for the parade, being the second runner-up, the first runner-up of the voting.
The gal who was sitting beside the driver was Mary Butler. Mary Butler Crown.
That's Mary Butler.
No, beside the driver, in the left. That's Mary Butler.
And this is Carolyn.
Yes,
And
I think that's Emma Niece.
and what do you call that, a stagecoach or some other kind of coach? It kind of looks like a stagecoach to me, but somebody from the society said, no, that's not a stagecoach. I think it was you, Milt. So it must be some other kind of a coach.
Not a barouche, that's for sure.
Not a barouche. I don't even know what that is. Is that a glide, like a glide?
It's like, it has, it's like a carriage, it's not that, it's not enclosed.
Among the show and tell demonstrations were firefighters from Humeville. Everybody know where Humeville is? It's just below Langhorne on the Chamonix Creek. The firefighters demonstrated how an 1838 mobile water tank would extinguish a fire. The men manned water hoses from the tank powered by hand cranks. They directed the stream at a model building set afire in the middle of Main Street. I think that's in the parade video, if I'm not mistaken. All the while, a nod to the future of the country floated above the bunting and flag draped parade route, a dirigible airship. Now, I asked Esther, and I've looked for any mention of this, but I guess people were so engrossed in the parade they didn't look up. But the image clearly shows it. Officials calculated that attendance surpassed that drawn to the Sesquicentennial International Exposition in Philadelphia in 1926. Quite an achievement. Now what is left are photographs and living memories from people like Esther Welch, who is with us today. She's 97 and was a close friend of Centennial Queen Carolyn Fellman. Both graduated from Doylestown High in 1938. I caught up with Esther recently and asked her what she remembers most about that magical week in this borough 80 years ago. She thought a moment and then with a big smile put it all in context. Quote, "What I enjoyed most about the celebration was the friendliness, the feeling that this is ours and we are together. Doylestown was so close back then it was amazing. Anyone who you didn't know, you knew by the time the celebration ended. You did know." And that's a look back at Doylestown's wondrous week in 1938. Thanks for coming. I invite any questions you might have about this or anything else. Otherwise, it's Milt's turn. I do.
Well, welcome to the Centennial. Glad to see you all here. I have the distinct honor and pleasure this afternoon to introduce you to several people in the audience that had relatives that were the promoters of the Centennial, and some of their descendants are here today. Dave Ferris and his family, and his brother Don. Would you please get up?
Mom was queen, and she had 2 children. This is my brother Don. He came all the way from Georgia. I'm Dave. I came all the way from Doylestown.
I did too originally, so.
Mom was born in 1920, and she died in 2006, making her 86 years of age at her death. She was an only child, sickly as a youngster. I don't know what that means. I just heard that said over the years that she wasn't very healthy, but she did okay. She was a hairdresser and a housewife and a mother. Her first home was at 178 North Broad, thanks to Milt, who gave me that information.
And it's still
I wasn't
there. I think
sure
the
of
house
the
is still
address.
there.
It's no longer there,
Oh,
the
it's no
house.
longer.
I think the Bucks County parking lot is there now, or garage. It's close to it. And she also, well, her mother and father moved, and I don't know when that move occurred or why, but they moved to the Mercer Museum, where my grandfather was caretaker there. And they lived in the basement of the museum, and if you look from the Green Street side, to the lower left is a window and a door. It was like a little apartment, and they lived there. And then our grandfather took care of the museum. He went around cleaning, and so we have memories of being in that museum, running around. You want to tell the story about the dog that scared you?
Yeah. I'm running out of cord here. I was only, let's see, I don't believe I have an earlier memory in my life than this. But I only remember there was like a ceramic, or it could have been metal, St. Bernard. And to me it was about this tall. And it was obviously part of the museum. But it was outside on this, it was like a patio, concrete or stone patio. I remember getting on top. I think my grandfather helped me up on it. And I think I fell off of it. But that was my only memory of my grandfather, the only memory. And I might have been 3 years old, you know. And that was because he passed in, 54, right?
Yes.
I think. So I was born in 51, so I wasn't very old. But we used to play in the Mercer Museum. And all those mounted heads of animals in this, and all the stuffed animals, and all those, it was creepy to me.
Scary.
Oh yeah, we'd run around in there, underneath, all around those things, like a big indoor playground. And we thought it was like our own personal little, or big place to play. But yeah, that's my only memory of him. And you know, being, you know, they lived in the museum. It was kind of weird, you know, I thought. Not at the time, but now it's like, living in there.
It was the basement of the Elkins Library, the building next door to the museum. There was a basement there that was quarters for the caretaker.
Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah, I mean, I've already learned stuff today that I didn't know.
Mom married in 1945. Dad came back from the war. Right after he got back, they got married in 45. And then we came along. And Mom was very modest. She never talked about what she accomplished, or, you know, her title or anything like that, unless somebody asked her about it. But she did not bring it up or talk about it, just the way she was. And I wanted to point out that up front here, there's a copy of this article, which was printed in the Intel in 1976. It's the best article I've seen about her, and quotes from her, and you know, it's so if you have any interest in her and her role in all of this, this is the best article, I thought. So that's up here. It's for anybody who wants to take one. I had this horrible speech, she said. This was all I had to do in the beginning, I guess, of each ceremony or whatever. She had, and my English teacher really had a fit about the speech. It just went on and was very ungrammatical. What initially was one long sentence became two, but she would still have trouble saying it in one breath. So that's what Milt just asked me to read. And it is printed in this article. And it says, fellow citizens of Doylestown and the United States, in the name of the inhabitants of the goodly borough and in honor of this celebration this evening, I bid you all a most cordial welcome. Whether you were born within its boundaries, interlacing your affection with those with whom you compose the Incorporated Brotherhood of the great facility of the United States, or whether you have forsaken your home in some foreign country, renouncing all allegiance unto it, and have adopted this as your earthly home here to abide as one of its children, seeking its peace and welfare as long as God in his providence shall continue us here, or whether you are a native of some other city, county, or state, and are present to enjoy with us this celebration in the name of our borough, I extend to each and all of you the endearing address of fellow citizens and friends, and bid you welcome to the historical pageant of Doylestown. She was right. That's a tough one.
And that's not one breath. There's no way you could do that in one breath.
No.
Well, she was 18 years old.
Well, 18, yeah.
Well, it's great to have relatives here. That's what this is all about today. And the living descendants of now the queen of the Doylestown Fair. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Milt.
Now, I hope the next one works out, because Carl mentioned Virginia Shaw. Virginia Shaw was the runner-up, and she was Miss Columbia. She became Miss Shelley later on. She now lives in Utica, New York, and I talked to her the other day, and she's almost 97, and she's sharp as a tack, and I'm going to try to get her on the phone. She's waiting, hopefully, in Utica for this call. Now, what I'd like you to do is, when I get her on the phone, I'm going to hold up my cell phone like that, and would you all say, greetings from Doylestown, Miss Columbia. That's what I'd like you to say. Okay? Let's see if we can get her on the phone. Is this Mrs. Shelley? All right. I have a few people here that would like to say something to you, Mrs. Shelley. Okay. Go ahead.
Greetings from Doylestown, Miss Columbia. I can't understand this.
They said, greetings from Doylestown, Miss Columbia.
Greetings to you. In 1838, Doylestown had the Centennial celebration, and it was decided they would have the Queen, and the high school would pick her. The senior class, Charles McKinstry was in charge, and the junior class, Bill McKinstry was in charge. The senior class chose Carl Feldman, and the junior class chose me. Then Ginger Shaw. Charles McKinstry sold more tickets to admission to the event at the fairground, and his pick, then his senior pick, Carolyn Feldman, was then the Queen, and that made me Miss Columbia. And now we can fast forward to 1988. When people wanted another celebration, we had a 50-year celebration.
Yeah.
They wondered if Carolyn and Feldman and Ginger Shelley were still alive. And yes, we were. So we were part of the 50th parade.
Well, you didn't live in Doylestown, did you?
I lived in Doylestown, right outside, a mile and a half out of town, on Turk Road.
You're on Turk Road, okay. And
We had Pebble Hill Farm. I don't know whether they still use the name Pebble Hill Farm.
yes, well, Pebble Hill area anyway. I don't know about a pond.
Well, if you go on Turk Road, it's about out of your reputation abroad. And I came to Ithaca to be near my daughter Mary Shelley.
Yeah, she's an artist, isn't she?
Right, you may know her because she participates in a lot of the craft shows you have now.
Oh, okay.
I think they have it at the college.
Okay, all right.
And she does wood carving, so I don't know whether you know her. Many people in Doylestown have bought her work, so.
Well, it's been a pleasure to link up with you from here to Ithaca and from Doylestown to Ithaca. So have a wonderful time and live to be 100.
Well, listen, that puts me today. I'm still here, as you can tell.
That's right.
I'm 96 and I'm happy and healthy.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
They're going to say goodbye to you.
Bye. Thank you.
Do you remember Esther Fellman? She was in the. Well, yes, but Esther Fellman, they think they might be related, was in Caroline's class in 38. Did you know her at all? She'd just like to say hello to you.
Yes, you were just a kid. This is Esther. I was seated right behind Carolyn. That's how we met. But I remember you. You were that cutie that was on the float. Yes. Yes.
You were over the right-hand side of the room.
Okay. It was nice talking to you. Bye-bye.
Well, I don't know.
Milt says he doesn't think he'll make it.
I won't make it, but you will. How about the Gulick family? John, how? John?
My great-uncle Russ Gulick was chairman of the entertainment committee.
He was our yesterday Centennial pageant, the head of the Centennial pageant at the fairgrounds.
All right, nice title. Anyway, he was in charge of that. Russ Gulick was one of 6 children who grew up on Shule Avenue, right next to the firehouse. His renown, more than anything, I think, was he was the model that served for the World War I monument at the corner of Broad Street and North Main Street. There's 2 soldiers. He's the reclining soldier who is being served water by Rutherford. I forget, Raymond Rutherford. Russ was in Company G during World War I. He served over in France, and in fact, he was gassed. Obviously, he survived that. Moved back to Doylestown, and then he and Mr. Rutherford got contacted by Mercer to come put on their uniforms, which I still have. I still have his uniform. Put his uniform on and come and model for that memorial, that monument. So he served as the model for that, and then he spent the rest of his life in Doylestown. He was one of the original greenskeepers at Doylestown Country Club. He sold insurance. He was a justice of the peace. He sold cement. He spent a lot of time at the tavern that I guess was at the top of the hill there, where Shule Avenue meets Court Street. I forget. I don't know. Whatever tavern that was, he spent a good time.
I think that was the Court Inn.
The Court Inn, yeah. He was known to frequent that place, and passed away in 1960. I was just a couple years old when he died. I have just a snapshot of him in my head. But that was Russ Gulick.
You know what he was?
I don't know. I'll have to count on you for what Charles G. Happ's role in the Centennial was.
He was the chairman of the Parade of Progress.
Charles Happ would have been my great-uncle, one of 13 kids, and my great-grandfather set up his family here in Doylestown in the real estate business. Several of Charles' brother and himself were real estate agents. They had a pretty brisk business of placing immigrant German farmers in old and abandoned farms in Bucks County in the 20s and 30s. Since there were 13 kids, there were enough brothers left over to start a general contracting business, HAP Contractors, which is still extant. I'm involved in that. We are celebrating our 90th year in business. Charles had a couple of kids. The only one whose name I know is Jerry Happ. He recently passed. Jerry had 5 kids, several of which are still in the area, and it's a big family.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there an Esther Fellman Welsh in the audience? Yes, she is.
I, of course, was seated behind Carolyn Feldman, Jean, and that was the first time that we met. We both realized our last name were Feldman. We had no idea if we were related or not, but of course she went home and checked with her father. I checked with my father, and they think maybe they were some kind of cousins. However, I had no idea that I would be seated behind the Queen. And then, of course, Ed Ferris was seated behind me because we were seated alphabetically by first names and last names. And I don't have anything planned to say except that when Carl called and asked to take a picture of me, I suggested he use my senior picture in the torch. But he wanted the wrinkles instead. So here's
Thanks, Esther. And she was in the class of 1938 with Esther. Yeah. Is there a Jean Weisel in the audience? Does anybody know Jean Weisel?
Hello, I am now Jean Weisel Rutherford, and I remember quite a bit about the Centennial Parade. I was, I think, a sophomore, and I remember our classes had to do a performance at the Memorial Field, which is down where Doyle School is, where they still have playfields there. And we did a dance. It was on an elevated platform, and I don't remember how many dozens of people came to see it, but we did it. And I remember some of the parade. I took pictures, and I remember the sheets float, and I just saw that go by on this tape. The Sheets store was a department store, and they had 2 girls, and one, Gertrude Sheets, was in my class, and Margaret was older. But anyway, these 2 girls were on that float, and I remember that, took a picture of that. There were just some highlights that I had of what happened at that time.
Thank you.
Jean is, she said she's a sophomore, that she's a class of 1941 at high school. Is there a Dave Winholtz in the audience?
No.
Yes, he is. That's right there. Come on up here, Dave.
I was in the Centennial Parade. I remember I was about a little over 9 years old. And I don't think officially, but we ran with whatever things, floats or whatever we liked. That's what we went with. That's about all I can remember about it.
Dave thinks he's in a picture that we have at work of these little guys running down the street trying to cause trouble, and I think you were one. That would be you, Dave. Well, I've run out of guests, but this is a picture of the fairgrounds, which was given to me by Mr. Gardy. Carter, come on up.
I can't tell you a lot about the Centennial. I was 7 in 1938, and I know that my family was very involved with helping to get things done and try to come up with ideas. My uncle was in charge of the theatrical groups, and he stayed with the theater. He wrote reviews and so forth. My father was a chairman or a secretary of the organizing committee for the celebration, and he was born in 1901, I think, and so he was just a child at the time. But I'm delighted that you've made this great effort, and maybe I'll remember things for the next one.
Well, there might be another person at the microphone by then, but
and another one here too.
Yeah. By the way, Mr. Gardy's father was the co-founder of the Doylestown Fair. You didn't own the grounds, did you? You owned it. And there's the Doylestown Fairgrounds, where the Centennial pageant was held, and it drew over 5,000 people. And as Carl mentioned, it was done in 3 nights. It was so popular and so immense. It was over 5,000 people there for 3 nights, and that's the program, the original copy of a program from our yesterday's pageant, with a cast of over 1,000 people. I'm going to close with the copy of the wooden book that many of you are familiar with, and maybe you still have it in your collections at home. This was all produced here in Doylestown by a firm called the Nice Planning Mill, a lumber mill, and they were on Decatur and Clinton, and it's now, there's condominiums there now, or townhouses. There were 4,000 of these published, and when the fair opened on May the 30th, 1,000 copies were sold on the first day. And by the end of the Centennial, on the 4th of June, all of these were gone. So, but since then, they filtered back into the community. Now, I'm going to give you a little quiz here. In 1938, how much do you think that this book would sell for? $3. How much? $1.
50 cents.
Who said 50 cents? You said 50 cents. Anyone else? Well, Mary Ann, you're right. Can you imagine 50 cents for this?
I remember, my mother told me.
I just found out this the other day, and it was advertised in the newspapers at the time, go out and buy a copy of the commemorative book, but it never mentioned the price. But in an old photograph that I had at work, there was a stand selling at the Burpee Flower Garden Minuet Top Day, and the little sign on the flowers on the umbrella stand said 50 cents, and that's the only way I knew. They didn't put it in the paper because they said, "Oh, you're going to buy it anyway." I guess they didn't have to do it. Well, that closes the Doylestown Centennial. Thank you.